Welcome everybody to Group Underworld, Grupo Inframundo. En esta ocasión tenemos una entrevista con Garret Zima. Garret, say hi.
Hello.
Please tell us a little about yourself.
Basically, I make Chucky dolls and all that fun stuff, and then I worked with Trick or Treat Studios for the last couple years on some of their Chucky merchandise, and the dolls and some of the accessories and stuff like that.
So a lot of people don't know how the Chucky dolls were made, or where do they began finally.
Yeah, I started making dolls probably in 2015, I think. And from there, I just, at first I wanted to just make a doll for myself to see how cool it would turn out. And then other people were interested. And it just sparked, people wanted customs done. And then Trick or Treat came in and wanted to do something. And then I did stuff with Cult of Chucky and then the TV series. Yeah. So it all spawned from there. It's just making a doll from scratch has been always a challenge. And I've gotten it down pretty good now.
I know. I remember came to the Chucky when it was a group in 2016, I believe. 2016. Oh. And the Facebook group Chucky Nation, I think it was.
Yes.
The first group I entered, me as a fan.
I think so too. I think that was one of the first ones. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I met you. When I first wanted my first Chucky doll, I remember I asked you, and it was a whole lot of money for me in that time.
Yeah, it's down to it's they're just very time consuming, and that's why I wanted, when Trick or Treat approached me, I thought it was like just a perfect opportunity to mass produce it, because the amount of work I do with my other business, I have to have a certain set price about what I charge for my custom work. So that's how I kind of configured the pricing. But yeah, it seems like a lot of people like it and they appreciate work like yourself, and saved up and got one, and now you got something cool.
Yeah. Now the collection it's bigger than what I thought it will be. Let's start with some quick questions. First one, when did you first became a Chucky fan?
Oh boy, I think I was like a Leprechaun fan first. I always liked on, and then Chucky was always kind of there because I'm a big scaredy cat. So Chucky's very tame compared to a lot of the other horror films out there, and it was always like a good film to go into. I think I probably watched Bride of Chucky first, and then from there I watched the other ones. But I don't know, I probably was 10, maybe 11, 12 years old when I first started watching Chucky films and became a fan of it.
Okay, nice. When or how did you start making Chucky dolls? You already told us that you wanted one for yourself, but when was the time that you realized I want to do this for all the fans?
Yeah, at first I was making the dolls in my living room. I had an apartment with a friend of mine, and I just would have cardboard laid out, and that was fine. But then, it gets messy. And so then I started renting a workshop to sort of scale it up for the demand, because back then there's still a demand, but it's when the first Good Guy custom started coming out, I was getting a lot of orders for them, and I had to figure out something. So that's why when Trick or Treat came along, it kind of eased off from making so many customs and for other price points for people.
Okay, what's the hardest part of making Chucky dolls? All the process.
For the Good Guys, at least, the hardest part is because the doll has to stay very clean. You can't have dirt or dust or specks. it has to be flawless, and especially when you make a custom piece for somebody, it's got to be very close to spotless. And I think that's the biggest challenge in the workshop here is keeping the workshop clean. So then as I'm applying clear coats to finish the heads, that everything stays perfect. And that's always like the biggest challenge is getting the heads looking right, make sure the eye holes are cut correctly, stuff like that. Everything else is easy. Making the castings, I have a roto casting machine behind me that makes a lot of the parts, so I'm able to get a very good quality part that is, even coated of resin and stuff like that, so it's durable but not too heavy. Stuff
Okay.
like, yeah.
Nice. So a lot of work, it seems. How much time just one good guy doll take you?
Typically I say a good guy doll can take 2 weeks if everything goes correctly. And it's probably not 2 weeks long. It's just everything has to dry. There's, let something dry for 24 to 48 hours. The type of paint I use for the shoes, you have to wait almost 48 hours between it. So this particular paint kind of sticks onto the resin better, but it takes longer to dry. Stuff
Okay.
like that, it can get time consuming.
I can imagine.
Yeah, yeah.
So how was the approach of the Chucky production when they called you for, I think it was Cult of Chucky, right?
Cult of Chucky. Yeah, Tony reached out because they wanted the good guys to look like they did in the first or second film. And he was just very passionate about let's get Cult of Chucky to look the same. And so I provided the castings for the good guys and the hand castings and so forth. And some of the body forms, so they had an idea, even though they made the bodies eventually out of like fabric and stuffing. They were given these castings, so they had references for scale, because I think after Seed of Chucky there was, they had thrown a lot of things away, or sold things. So when they got the deal for Curse of Chucky, they didn't have like a lot of references, and they had a short period of time to build everything. So when Cult came along, I think maybe that was like 2 years later, Cult happened. Um, they just reached out to they were looking to find a fan or someone that can make something look really good to work with. And so he reached out to me on that. And then after that, it was the TV show came along a few years later, and they asked me to make more stuff, which was cool. So I made like the shoes, and we provided the wigs, the shoelaces, some of the body forms. They use the good guy head, but it is modified in the TV show, but it has the same face. And then they used my Tommy head for the neutral, and then they had someone go off and sculpt the pissed off looking one.
Okay.
And yeah, so that's kind of pretty much it with the show.
Nice. So now that you talk about the fact that they didn't have the original cast for making Chucky the same way it was like 30 years before,
Yeah.
it's because of that, no? Because a lot of people ask that why does Chucky doesn't look the same? Because it's a $1 million production, but they don't know this exact thing.
Sometimes it's more complicated than that. It kind of comes down to time, how much time they have, and there is cost factor. I mean, you see like now the newer puppets have more rod removal, where back in the day they had to use a puppet that was completely cable controlled. So there was more setup involved. So those productions had to cost more. Where like a TV show is a little more is not as expensive.
Yeah.
So I assume sometimes I don't fully understand why things look a certain way,
Okay.
but to happen the way that they want to do it. I'm just happy that they wanted my input for it. So all in all, it looks pretty good compared to other films and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think Chuck improved a bit.
Yeah, Chuck is like one of the franchise that keeps getting better in terms of effects and all of what you can talk about the the story or script, whatever you want to call it. It's fine. The fan
Right.
base it's really split on that one, but besides that, I think the doll looks way better than it was in 2020.
Yeah, and it's all about nostalgia because in reality, with these TV shows or any future movies that come out about Chucky, it's very nostalgic. Like there's a big fan group of all the original films, and they just want to see Chucky the way he looked back then. And so I think it's cool that Tony's, they're making an attempt to get it to look like that because Chucky, just like Freddy and all these other things are very nostalgic to the fans, and they want something to look as close as possible. So yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, what was the approach from Tots to make this what's now the only licensed good guy doll?
Yeah. I was at a Halloween trade show and they had a booth there and someone told them I was there, and all of a sudden I was having dinner with Chris and Justin, the owners of Trick or Treat. And we just figured out that they knew they were getting the license, the Chucky license, and we ended up just working something out. And I think it took almost a year later at that point to see where the final product is, because they did a Kickstarter to
Yeah,
prove that it would sell, because a life-size Chuck, our good guy doll, hadn't been done in many years. I believe Mezco Toys, or maybe I can't
Sideshow.
remember.
I think it
So,
was Sideshow.
there was two different or maybe three different ones that came out early, and they would do these limited runs of maybe 1,000 units, 2,000 units, and so they would sell out quickly, and then there would people would throw them up on eBay for a lot more.
Yeah,
So I was just explaining to them that there's a crazy market, because if I'm selling custom dolls at this price point, imagine a price point that's cheaper where more people can afford it. And that's where we came out with the good guy. I think it was Trick or Treat's first attempt at a full life-size quality scale figure.
okay.
Before that, they were doing a lot of foam or maybe foam latex figures, and this was something they were doing where it was in vinyl, a little more durable quality. And when you're doing a product like that, typically, like if you'd go to a store and buy a baby doll, you can get one for 20 or 30 bucks, but
Mhm.
those are being produced by the hundreds of thousands. But this particular product, I think the first run was probably somewhere around 5, maybe 10,000 units. So it's a very low production scale. So that's kind of where that price point came about, at the 500 at the time. And it sold very well through the
Yeah.
Kickstarter, and we were able to proceed. But I think it took, with these factories, you got to get on their schedule. So once you get on their schedule, it can take about a year to get the product from pre-order to finish.
Okay, so the original sculpt for the good guy was rigid then, with no foam or anything else, just rigid,
Um,
complete piece.
so I think they came out with like a Saw puppet and then a Billy puppet from
Yeah.
those other films.
Foam.
Or Dead Silence, yeah. And I think they were made out of a certain type of material that maybe the fans weren't like enthused about. And
Yeah,
so
I know. I remember that doll.
and, and so we were looking into vinyl, which works really nice. It's a little more durable and it doesn't scratch as easy. Stuff like that we're looking into. So they were kind of made similar to how like a baby doll would be made.
Okay, so you just provided the data, or how was the process of making them when they have the final decision?
I had to provide them with a finished doll, and then the castings, the blank castings. So basically a breakdown of how it's made. And that's what you have to do in like any sort of toy production, is you have a finished paint master and then a complete breakdown, the head, the hands, the shoes, the several sets of outfits made, so that they can try to copy from it. And it gets difficult because you're talking to these factories overseas and trying to get your point across on how something should be made. And so sometimes it gets really difficult. And so that's why it probably took about a year, I think, after the Kickstarter to get the product completed. But it turned out pretty good. I think they turned out nice for that price point. Some people still like the customs, but I was pretty pleased with the result.
Yeah, and you still have time to make the custom dolls you do, no?
Yeah, I'm still doing them. I still have a very steady schedule with them, but it's like when you make so many, it gets tiring.
I
So
can imagine it.
the fact them making them overseas was definitely a plus.
A lot of people don't know, this part of the process, but
Yeah.
you had like a list to get the clients, right? Because it's not that easy to get in contact with you to have one of your pieces.
Well, if anyone wants to contact me, usually Instagram is the best way to just
Okay.
personally message me, because sometimes people, I guess ask questions in the comments and I don't always look at all the comments.
Yeah.
So I personally message me. That's the way. But yeah, I have quite a bit of a list right now. And I'm still taking orders if they want, but it's
Yeah.
a long
I remember that at some time, at some point, I don't know exactly when, your list was about like 6 months wait, right?
right now. I think it's about a year. It's a
Okay.
little weird.
A little bit more.
It's weird having, and it's not it's not Chucky orders entirely. I own my own haunted attraction. I dabble a lot in different things, so there's just a lot of workload I have right now. Like right now, I shouldn't say right now, but in the next month or so, I have to complete a RoboCop for
Okay.
somebody.
A
Yeah,
life-size Robocop?
yeah. So they had all the original parts of the costume from like the screen used costume,
Okay.
and so right now I'm building an entire statue for it so they can display it better. So those are
Okay.
kind of things that that client reached out to me almost a year ago to book that in. And so now I have to do it next month. So times 10, but I stay very busy, which is good.
Okay, yeah, I can see. So you work with any kind of project I can see now.
It's the nice thing over the last couple of years, I've been able to just pick the kind of work I want to do.
Yeah.
So usually I don't like doing a custom piece from scratch. I'm usually pretty safe doing what I'm doing. But a friend of mine that had this RoboCop suit, I just thought it was so cool that I knew I would have fun making it or finishing it rather than making more Chucky dolls. So it's a little
It's
toss up.
okay, yeah, it's a way to find something else to do and not
Yeah.
get overwhelming with Chucky dolls.
Oh, it's horrible. I'll have like 5 or 6 heads that I'm working on at the same time. And I'm just looking at them going, oh my God, like there's just so much work to do. But at the end, the clients love them. So
Yeah.
I'll keep making as long as they like them. So
And also a question that a lot of people have is why would they buy a good guy doll from you and why would they buy a good guy doll from Trick or Treat Studios? What's the difference?
I
Please
say by
explain.
the Dog Studios. I'm just swamped, and I'm willing to take orders, but I just get very swamped. So I would prefer them to buy the licensed product, and I have a lot of licensed products right now. Trick or Treat, I bought wholesale from them, the Tommy heads and the pizza heads, and I still have some good guy plushes and different things. And I've been preferring to sell those over
Mhm.
making customs because it's already made. You just box it up and send it to the client, and that's been working out a lot better. I've been trying to work with more international buyers, but it gets difficult. For some reason, I've been having a hard time shipping cheaply to Mexico. I don't know why
I
that
know,
is.
I know. I I totally know customs here in Mexico, it's a nightmare. You have
Is
no idea.
Yeah, because I shipped something to the United Kingdom for a reasonable price, but then it was with Mexico, it was a little more complicated. I can do so. I have an eBay store set up where eBay does this global post where they're able to figure it out with clients in Mexico. Otherwise, I use DHL, but that costs a lot more.
Yeah,
It's
a
like
lot.
buying a plane seat for your Chucky doll.
Yeah, I know. And and it's an example. I to sell some Chucky boxes. Good guy from Child's Play 2. And
Yeah,
the price for me to make them, it's like $30. And
yeah.
shipping here inside Mexico, it goes no more than 25 equal $30 of shipping here in Mexico. But shipping them to the USA, it's
Nightmare.
60 $70 just for
Oh
shipping.
yeah. Even in the US, because I'm in Wisconsin, and shipping in the United States, you know, I knew that Trick or Treat was losing this license, and so I reached out to them and I was like, well, can I just order like 250 Good Guy boxes? And they're like, okay. And so
Fine.
order, and buying it wholesale, you get a really great deal. But then the reality comes in when you get this shipment in, and it's so
Yeah.
huge. Like, how do you got to fold it down. You also want to keep the box in pristine condition because the client's already paying so much for it. But the reality of it, it's so large that it can get damaged easily. Because for a while, Trick or Treat did sell the boxes individually, but they stopped because they kept getting returns, because it's like trying to ship a painting. You have to bobble wrap, you have to do these things to keep it protected, but at the end of the day, to the material cost to just protect the box costs more than the actual box.
Yeah, that's the nightmare of shipping. I know. I have a lot of friends who make Chucky dolls here in Mexico, and there's a like this, I don't want to say fight, but this discussion on some groups here in Mexico about why buying from someone that's making them individually like you do, and
uh,
buying from Trick or Treat Studios or NECA or licensed dolls, it's like it's almost the same price, $500, 400 for a some good guy doll someone made from scratch. And
okay.
it's like this discussion of you don't have a licensed doll, your doll is not worth enough. Do you find
um,
this like actually real?
I found that there's some fans that strictly only collect licensed merchandise because that's what they collect, and then some people want something a little bit more with a custom. It just all depends on the custom maker, because sometimes there's custom makers out there that will actually make it way better than the mass produced, but then there's some customs that maybe don't, and you're probably better off.
Not that good.
Because the Trick or Treat at that price point, I think like the license, I don't know the exact number of how much it costs, but the license is very expensive.
Yeah.
And other custom makers that are making stuff don't have to pay that license. So then that's why the price can be so much cheaper. But a lot of people prefer the licensed products, and that's what I've been over the last year. So I've been preferring to sell the licensed stuff because it's legit, and a lot of times it can be made very well.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to make Chucky dolls?
Um, yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's a tough one, because sometimes people message me all the time asking me how to make them, and I think it's a little more complicated to explain it. I'd love to do a YouTube video one day where I'm doing a big tutorial on how I put them together, but
A 3 hour tutorial.
but
A 3 hour tutorial of how to make them.
the best way is there's custom makers out there that sell blanks, and you can buy blanks and try to make your own doll or sculpt your own doll and make a mold. But making your own mold gets very expensive.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily cheap to make one from scratch, especially if you don't have the equipment. Like I have this accumulation of equipment that's at my disposal that I, paid thousands, tens of thousands of dollars for, but it's all paid off because of all
Mhm.
the work I've done. But if you're going off trying to make one by yourself, it can get kind of pricey.
So it's easier to get a cast and then start working on it.
And like figure out how to paint because everything I've ever learned has been on YouTube. So
Okay.
even mold making, back then when I first started mold making, they didn't have a lot of great videos of how to mold a large piece. Maybe to mold a small piece, but to a larger scale, it's difficult. So I kind of had to test around and make, my goal from the beginning was let's make the best Chucky possible. um and so all my molds are very, I don't know, I'm very particular, and I think that's why some people use me. But um yeah, if you're gonna make one yourself, it's fun. I'm sure it's doable. I make props for haunted attractions, so a lot of times I'm making things that I have no idea how to make it, but I'm just gonna figure it out.
Okay. Another
Yeah.
question I have here is you only make the good guy doll, but I know you already make Tommy dolls. But also, do you have any other Chucky doll that you make or something?
I've been for the last couple years. I've been just making the good guy, and then maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, I started doing the Tommy,
Mhm.
and they just keep selling, so it's hard to work on anything else. Trust me, I got things I wish I could show you right now that I'm working on, but I just when you have a certain amount of workload, it's hard to make anything new when you're already just selling exactly what has been selling great for years. So, but I am working on something I can't say, but
Okay. A little
yes,
a sneak peek or anything?
I can't. I
Fine.
can't. I'll jinx it if I show you.
Okay. It's fine. It's fine. Do you have like an exact or more or less of how many good guy dolls you have made in over this, like how much, 10 years almost?
I I wish I could have gone back and numbered them, and I
Yeah.
never did. I couldn't even tell you.
No.
I don't
No.
want to give you a guesstimate either, but
No.
it's a lot. I've been kept busy for many years from it.
Okay. It's fine.
All right.
No, no, not numbered. Then I'm scared about how many you've done. You must be really tired of making Chucky dolls. The hair. A lot
Hmm.
of people have this problem with the hair, the Chucky doll hair. And it's something that I know, but I'm not too sure. It's not just one tone of red like they think so. What kind of hair do you use?
It depends on the model doll. So I think when the hair changed colors slightly was probably on Bride of Chucky. There's several tones and colors, and then in Seed they did that as well. But it's always stayed pretty consistent from 1 till 3. And the hair was made by a company called NFT,
Okay.
and I work with them and I get hair for them, and that's the same type of hair I provide for the TV show. But it's a very expensive hair, so some people will buy the synthetic wigs that definitely work, but some fans want the NFT hair, the hair that's exact. It's exactly dye matched. So I actually clipped a little hair off of my screen used doll
Okay.
and send it in, and they color matched it. And so that's how the hair on mine is pretty spot on. The only thing that sucks about using NFT hair, in the movie they used hair products to
Okay.
to shape it.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, and on my customs, because it is like a paint job and it's a clear coat, I'm always worried that the hair product I use might mess with the paint.
Mhm.
So I don't use a hair product on my customs, but it's still the hair is very pliable, so you can shape it um, to wherever you want.
Okay. Now that you mentioned the props you have, how many props screen used do you have in your collection?
Quite a bit, because the last couple years these auctions were kind of getting a little crazy, so I started holding on to things and then trying to acquire things directly from crew members. Um,
Okay.
so I've been holding on to a lot. I have like several crew jackets from the sequel and the third film, and I have like a Chucky head that it would have been worn by Ed Gale in two. When
Okay.
there's one scene in the movie where they use Ed in it, and he's like shoveling dirt, and they couldn't get the puppet to do it completely.
Mhm.
Um, so I have that mask, and then I have Andy's original outfit, stuff like that. Several good guy boxes. Those have been the ones that have been hard to get over the years, because they made a lot of them, but a lot of them, deteriorated and just don't really exist that much anymore. So I'm holding on to my good guy boxes,
Yeah, I can.
and I have the baby Glenn when he comes out of Tiffany at the end of the movie.
Okay.
So that one came from Kevin Yeager, and it's the original. It's like a half body,
Yeah.
but the original puppet they used in that, and some knives, Chucky knives, an original Child's Play 2 outfit. I'm just trying to think of the top of my head.
Okay.
That's different things like that. There's some cool stuff that I've gotten over the years. There's pieces that I wish I would never sold back in the day.
Okay.
When I started my haunted attraction, I needed to get a lot of money together, and so unfortunately I sold a lot back in the day, but I'm starting to get some of it back.
What's the most expensive item on your collection?
That's a good question. I mean, to me, the most valuable piece that I have is one of the original Child's Play 2 outfits.
Okay.
That Getting original doll clothing is a rarity, and it's kind of cool. It was one of the factory doll outfits you see in the film, and I used to have a hero puppet outfit, but I got rid of that but 2 years ago. But that one's probably the most valuable in my mind. I mean, I'm sure there's other pieces. Someone might value the Chucky head to be more, but I'm more value that costume, because I'm just a costume dork.
Okay.
I like the costume of it. I think that's the most interesting thing of the doll.
Well, that's an interesting point of view. That's
Yeah,
all. Because a lot of people, including myself, love like having these props, but like a Chucky screen used doll. And you talk
yeah.
about the outfits.
Yeah, the outfit is just so complicated. It's got textile fabric to make up the sweater, and these corduroy overalls that are a certain tint of blue, and they're
Oh
the
yeah.
silk screen. They're not heat pressed. They're done. It's just everything that took to make that almost seems so complicated. And it'd be interesting to talk to the person that was behind that and ask what they were thinking, because you could have easily done a blue overall and a simple shirt and called it a day, but someone took the extra steps to make it more unique than just a doll that you would see.
Yeah, like the things on the overall, no? The small how do they call them
The
this
little
the
cons,
jobs, the
and
good guy doll jobs that they have on the overall.
yeah, and there's like he's the baseball player and the
The
cowboy.
doctor,
And
everything.
the interesting thing is the little squigglies that you see in between, those are actually symbols for if you're like an electrician. Like there's certain symbols that you follow with,
Okay.
and they're all electrical. Like again, I don't know why why it's like that, but they're electrical symbols. So
Okay. We didn't know that. Now that you talked about working on the movie and on the TV series, What's the
Mhm.
best experience you got from the production? Were you there, or they called you for like a premiere or something?
They filmed it in Canada, and the rule is there that you have to have apparently so many Canadians per Americans because they want to keep the tax break or some sort of tax credit they get.
Okay.
So they more Canadians on set. So I wasn't, anywhere near the high point of the totem pole, so I didn't go to that. But they had me on call where there was like a situation where I had to make maybe some extra wigs or something like that, where I had to ship them to Canada. So I was just on standby basically for those little things. But no, I went to the London premiere of for Cult, and that's where I officially met Don and Tony in person, and they're just great people. Um, yeah, Tony's a great guy,
Mhm.
doing stuff, and yeah, I don't know. It was cool. I got to meet Jennifer Tilly and stuff there. She's a sweetheart. So it was just an amazing experience to meet them. And then when the TV show happened, we were doing a lot of FaceTiming for the first season to figure out how the doll was going to look. And it was just kind of cool to be in the presence of those people, because they're really cool people that you look up to.
And talking with Tony Garner, did he had any advice to give you about the whole process of making the way he works?
Not really. I think
No.
it was just what they were asking my opinion of what I needed or what I could provide and what this should look like. I think more on season one, Don was more talking to me about that and then going to them and telling them what it should look like.
Okay.
Basically, the big one was to get the Tommy head in the TV show using that head. That was something I was persistent on because someone else had sculpted a different head sculpt that looked similar, but I kept telling them like, let's just make it 100% right. So they ended up using the head I provided for them. So yeah, and I think in like season one, you can really see how like as long as the doll's lit properly, there's scenes where it looks really good and it almost looks like Child's Play 2
Yeah.
looking. But it kind of comes down to shadowing the doll correctly and making sure the lighting's right on it to give it that nostalgic look. So it's not even just all about building the puppet right, it's about lighting it right too. And in season one, there was some really good shots that I was impressed with.
Okay, nice. Well, we are out of time.
All
Thank you,
right.
Garret, for having this time to talk about Chucky and talk about your work.
And
Any social network they can contact you? You told us about how to get in contact with you for a Chucky doll, but any?
yeah. Yeah. So if you, my Instagram is at Garret Zima, and I post like right now. I'm mainly selling a lot of the trick or treat Tommy heads. They've been like sold out for a little while now, and I bought up a bunch, so I do have some available still at the retail price. And yeah, if anyone wants some, just reach out to me there, and I can hook you up with one. And I still do customs. It's just right now the workload's so high that it, accept more orders, but I will try.
It's fine. Done. Thank you so much for having the time to talk to us. Gracias a todos. Thank you, Garret.
All right, you have a good one. Thanks for having me.
Nos vemos en la próxima.